Hi everyone, welcome to Of Course.
China.
I'm Ziv,
I'm Fernando.
and today we're here with Loren Heinold. Loren is, we're catching him on a business trip to Guangdong.
Yep.
He's the co-founder of a very sensational snack that is a combination of Baozi and Pizza, and his investor is Mark Cuban. Don't miss this episode.
There's a lot to talk about. All right.
Hey Loren, thank you for being here.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Cool.
What brings you to Guangdong exactly?
Down here meeting with customers for Baozza. So supermarkets, restaurants, bars, cafes, schools.
Right.
Baoza.
Okay.
What is
Baoza.
exactly Baoza?
So Baozza is it's a portmanteau, a combination of pizza and baozi. So traditional Chinese steamed buns with a pizza filling.
Okay, and we don't really know which one is which, right? You have a few flavors.
We do have a few flavors. So we basically took pizza and put it inside of a Chinese steamed bun. So we have pepperoni, margarita, barbecue chicken, spinach and cheese, roast duck. Basically anything that you can put on top of a pizza, we put inside of a baozi.
Right. When we met a couple of days ago, after you told me the story, I said, it's one of those things that you always say, how come I didn't think about that?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it makes sense when you're in China.
How did you get to this idea? What brought you to this?
It's been a long journey. It started off with my co-founder and partner, another American who's been in China for a long time. Both of us are foodies. We love pizza. We love baozi. He was actually in Guangdong on a business trip. He was consulting for a U.S. company, and his client was an American who did not like Chinese baozi. And they were brainstorming about what could they put inside of a baozi to get this guy to try it. Cheeseburger baozi, hamburger baozi, pizza baozi. And it was kind of a eureka moment where he was like, pizza baozi, baoza. So he actually went back to the hotel where they had a buffet. And they had pizza and they had baozi at the Hyatt buffet in Guangzhou. He took a baozi, cut it open, scraped the fillings out, took a pizza, took the top off, put it inside, had a microwave it, and that was the first ever baozi.
Wow, that's 2016?
That was end of 2015. So we've gotten a lot more serious since then. We've had well more than 500,000 people try it and pretty good feedback. But that was the humble origin.
Okay.
Can we, because it's
please do.
still warm.
I'll
so
have this one. Oh no, you said you wanted
So you,
to...
yeah, so you
I'll have
say,
this one.
oh, still have cheese.
It's like you got
This is a pepperoni,
the
right?
pepperoni.
Yeah.
You
You've
got
touched it already, I'm not having it.
you got the barbecue chicken,
Alrighty.
and that must be the margarita left then.
So this one is a margarita.
Yep.
Here's an interesting thing. Okay, you're gonna tell us about how this is actually made in a microwave and whatnot.
Sure.
I was telling you earlier that when my mother-in-law makes baozi, and you put it in the microwave, because she makes like a ton, and you got something there. She makes a ton, and then we freeze it, and then we put it in the microwave. It just doesn't feel like this.
Sure.
What's the secret? Well, if you can share that.
Well, there's a lot going on there. It's different from in China. Anywhere across the country, you'll see the little stands in the morning that are hand wrapping them, and then they're steaming them, and you kind of grab and go while they're still hot.
Yeah.
All of our products are still hand wrapped, but we're doing it on a larger scale. And the trick is that for us to sell, to supply nationwide, to be able to have these products here in Dongguan, we have to freeze them and then reheat them. And the trick is really in the reheating process. So there's probably the biggest secret, the biggest challenge was in the dough. Getting the dough to the point where you could freeze it, ship it nationally, internationally, and then reheat, re-steam, reheat beautifully. And after not only just reheat in the microwave, but be able to pan fry, deep fry, bake. So we worked with German food scientists, Italian chefs, Chinese dough experts, nutritionists to get a dough that would perform like that.
Because, particularly, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this does not feel at all like it's been microwaved. It feels quite a lot
Right, you're
like...
having the toast the microwave
the steam one, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This one was
Pan fried.
right. So you like it?
I like it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I don't like about Baozi is that I'm not too crazy about the filling itself. So this is
the sweet
Great
pork
option, yeah.
and those things. Yeah.
How much does one of these cost at a shop? I mean, where are you selling them at the moment?
So we're selling in two different channels. We're trying to make it as widely available to people as we can. So we're selling it to the grocery channel. So just down the street, a couple hundred meters away, you can go to Spar and pick them up in the freezer section. And those are the boxes that we had earlier. So you bring them home, put in your microwave or rice cooker or however you're going to cook it. So that's nationwide through offline grocers as well as e-commerce platforms,
Taobao.
Taobao, all those kind of guys. We are about to launch in the convenience store market. So single serve, where you grab it and put it in the microwave in the convenience store. They have powerful microwaves, so that's like 20 seconds, and you've got a hot Baozi in the store.
Much better than those stupid hot dogs and
Yeah, so that's what we're competing with. And then our other channel is the food service channel. So we're selling to places that will then heat it up and serve it to their customers.
Okay.
So that's cafes, that's bars, restaurants, schools, kind of anyone that's serving food to their customers. So we're selling a slightly different product. It's heated in the same way, and then our customers are they're deep frying it, they're pan frying it, they're baking it, they're putting cheese on it, and they're baking it, and they're serving it to their customers.
You say also there is you say deep frying, right?
Yep.
And so, do you have an idea how many locations in China right now?
Oof.
Is it like hundreds or thousands or?
Hundreds.
Hundreds of locations, right? And so, what is the feedback you've been getting, and how did it change the feedback over the years since the beginning to now?
You know, we when we started this, both of us co-founders had other projects we were doing, other companies that we were involved in, and we kind of said, let's give this a shot. You know, I liked the idea, but before we really kind of took a deep dive and got serious, we wanted to have 100,000 people try it. Pretty big sample size. So we started out just doing events. We were doing WeWork, co-working spaces all across Beijing, food festivals, music festivals, pizza fest, that kind of thing, and just to talk to customers. So for all these events, we'd have our steamers and our team in the back steaming them and heating them, and then it'd be my partner Alex and I out front just talking to people and seeing what they thought about the products. And we've gotten a bit more maybe sophisticated and nuanced in our understanding of the market, but it hasn't changed that much. And here in China, the single biggest challenge for us and point of feedback is that because it looks like such a common and widespread Chinese food, that the Baozi, people immediately connected with that. We're getting ready to launch Baozi USA. We're exporting to Hong Kong, getting ready to export to Australia and the UK. And for most Western countries that don't have such a widespread Baozi culture, they think of it as a pizza product. But here in China, the first reaction is Baozi.
Right. So you said something about starting at events, right?
Yep.
So what, you had a booth at those events as a vendor selling just a Baoza booth, right? So from end of 2015, your co-founder, right? He had a eureka moment. How long it took you until you started doing it in events?
Our first event was July 6, 2016.
Okay.
So we did it at a co-working space. Didn't really know what to expect. We brought a couple Baozi masters to hand wrap them on site, brought some steamers, and we brought a DJ. So we wanted to be sort of fun, not traditional Baozi thing. So we had DJ Baozi spinning as our hand, we did our hand wrap Baozis.
DJ Baoza.
DJ Baozi. Yeah.
And from that moment, at the end of 2015 until that's about 6 months, right?
Yep.
What was that journey in the beginning? Like, what did you need to invest money? Were you very serious about it? Were you preparing to get to a point where you can do this at events? What was that like?
Well, it started off pretty low key. My partner Alex, he and I are friends that go way back to 2010 or so. We were both living in Beijing, but by 2015 he was back in Los Angeles. So came up there on a business trip here, went back to LA, and he actually taught himself how to wrap Baozi.
Okay.
Watching YouTube videos. So he started off just with focus groups, informal parties at his condo in LA. Had friends come over, he'd make some pizza Baozi, see if people liked it. So it was May 2016 where he left LA, moved to Beijing to just kind of give it a shot with me for the summer, do events. So once he arrived on the ground in Beijing, it was a few months, a month and a half until we did our first event.
I think that for a lot of people, it might be interesting to know, and I would like to know how much you can share. How do you go from a concept, from an idea, from a sample, from a focus group, and people liking it, and you scale it up to reaching hundreds of places in China? How do you go about finding a factory? How do you go about can you tell us a little bit about
how much money
those
is
steps?
needed?
Yeah,
This kind of thing.
Sure. Well, we had a long and kind of interesting path to get where we are right now. When we started the company, even before there was a company, we were doing events, and we both thought of this as really a retail concept, something where we'd open our own Baozza branded stores. We'd have our own Baozza workers serving Baozza in airports, high foot traffic areas. And so we decided to test that out, and we did just kind of short-term rentals. One place doing delivery, one place that was kind of a bar. We did a bar takeover.
Here in China.
Those were in Beijing.
Okay.
So we opened these stores, and just to see if people liked it in that setting. And the short answer was, yeah, they did like it. But we were making everything by hand. We get there early in the morning, start wrapping Baozzas, serve whatever we had that day, and then next day do the same thing.
Were you hands-on? Were you making Baozi? You? Yourself?
Personally?
Yeah.
I am not the...
Or your partner?
We hired people to do it.
Okay.
We can wrap Baozzas, but they're not the prettiest ones in the world.
Okay.
There's a lot of talent here in China.
You do know how to do it, but it's just not...
It's not beautiful.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, we can do it. So that was how we originally envisioned the brand. We thought that the product you're tasting now, the sort of Hot Pockets, the frozen product, would come many years later. And it was a lot of what we've where we are now comes from learnings we've gotten from our customers and just from being out in the market. So we had our first 8 square meter little store, and we had one European customer who would come and buy 36 Baozzas at a time, take them home, freeze them, and then that was his breakfast every morning. And he would send us pictures in the morning of what the Baozzas looked like.
But that was not the original plan.
He just...
At that time, he didn't have the microwave special bag.
No.
It was a bit different, right?
Yep.
Right.
So it was a very 1.0 low-tech kind of thing. And we're like, that's pretty interesting, right? And then...
Opens opportunities.
Yeah. So we eventually decided that even for our own stores, that it was just too difficult to be quality control and to be making them inside the store. So we decided to go to production facilities and produce them centrally and then send them to our own stores. Mm-hmm. And then we decided, well, if we're doing that, we could also just package them and sell them in the supermarket channel. So it was kind of an indirect route to get where we are. I would say if I could go back and do everything over, we probably would have skipped the retail part. Mm-hmm. This is I love being able to serve Baozi in a restaurant, and I love having deep fried and pan fried and all these different options. But I'd rather someone else be doing it and focus on what we're really good at.
Don't you think that I mean, first of all, those experiences are probably priceless, right? You gotta go through them to figure out what's the best way.
Sure.
But also, isn't it that having them in restaurants, bars, it supports in marketing, it supports the actual other distribution? Sure.
I mean, one of the brands that we look at as a good example is Häagen-Dazs. Häagen-Dazs they have branded restaurants where you can go in and sort of have an experience and eat it in that sort of setting. But then they're selling in the supermarkets, they're selling in convenience stores. You can buy them on the China National Railway, right? Yeah. So a multi-channel brand. That was kind of how we described ourselves as multi-channel, not just the freezer section, not just the restaurants and bars.
So the milestone, the 2016, you started serving it at events, and then you said going into restaurants.
Stores.
When was that?
Well, we were still running our own restaurants until last year. We opened a place in Shanghai. We had a franchise in Shanghai as well, and it was really last year, 2019, that we had our first supermarket sale, and then restaurants and bars were around the same time.
So, at which point did you start manufacturing? Producing it in a factory, like packaged. When was that?
That was so we moved to factory production just to support our own stores. That was end of 2018, beginning of 2019, and before we got to the point where we were ready to pull the trigger and produce, we spent a lot of time in the factories. So we worked with eventually 7 different factories, starting from a state-owned factory in Beijing, and kind of moved around until we found the right partner. But the factory world was a very new world for both of us. So there was a lot of lot of learnings, just figuring out how does this whole thing work. Right? I was coming from a restaurant background, which is very different story to go into the kitchen, whip something up. If it's not quite perfect, you just tweak it and add a little bit more salt. But doing something
industrial size,
if you're producing 10,000 at a time, you really gotta measure twice, cut once.
Is it a Baozza factory?
Most of our partners have been kind of specifically focused on Baozi, but they often will also do noodles or jiaozi or other dough-based products.
I wanted to ask you a question. I mean, and I think that might be something that might be interesting to a lot of people. How do you protect your idea legally in China? That's the topic of controversy around the world. This is something new. Dare I say, relatively easy to replicate. How do you handle that?
I wouldn't call it easy to replicate. So
okay, yeah.
You do what you can. Before Alex moved from LA to Beijing, before we sold the first Baozi, we'd already gone out, registered the website, registered the trademarks in Chinese and in English. That's kind of a basic level of protection. Because for us, the name was pretty important. The name, it's Baozza, Baozi Pizza. So the name is the product. So that was one thing we wanted to lock down. And we've since gone on to register Baozi and trademarks in other countries. After that, in terms of the actual product, I mean, it's kind of difficult to prevent someone from putting pizza inside of a steamed bun, right? So the secret sauce for us is in the dough. We spent a lot of time doing the dough. And to your point earlier, why didn't I think of this? We've talked to a lot of pizza restaurant owners who had thought of it and they tried it, but they just never got the dough right. Because it's not a Baozi dough, it's also not a pizza dough. And neither Baozi dough nor pizza dough works really in this kind of environment.
But this is interesting to understand for our viewers, right? I mean, when you don't think about it, you think, oh yeah, I mean, this place is an Italian restaurant here, and they can just make it now. But it's not true. It's not that simple.
They make calzones, but that dough is very different from this.
Right, it's a different dough. It can steam in the same way, right? Maybe they can figure out how to do it, right? But anyway, referring to Fernando's question, so someone can come tomorrow, figure out how to do this dough, and call it pizza pockets, and come out with something. I mean, they can call it Baozza because that's protected, but the actual food, if someone else figure it out, they can just do it, right?
I mean, that's we've already had that happen. People already have copied our products here in China, also in Milan, Italy. It's someone moved from Shanghai to Milan, and they just copied the products. So good luck to them. That's imitation is the most sincere form of flattery, right? And we expect that to happen. So beyond the trademarks, what we can do is just making the best possible product, getting out there quickly, and really building a brand. There's more than one. McDonald's is not the only place that makes hamburgers, right?
Right, sure. Right.
Haagen-Dazs is not the only ice cream on the market.
Right.
So we expect to be copied, and we're really just focused on what we control, which is making a good product and making a fun brand.
I want to talk about Mark Cuban.
Sure.
Yeah, this is an interesting story.
Yeah, because to me, when we were researching for this, we were like, wow, okay, that's big league. How did he come into your organization? At what point? How did you get to him? How did he get to you? I don't know.
Yeah, so it was early 2017, and we were trying to raise some money. Both Alex and I are former investment bankers, so we had a pretty fundraising deck. But we were two Americans in China trying to make Baozi, and so we were casting a pretty wide net in terms of who we approached. And we knew that Mark, beyond Shark Tank, which we did not go on, we know that he takes a look at a lot of early stage companies. So we just figured out his Dallas Mavericks email address and sent a cold email.
You figured it out.
You told me you just guessed it.
Alex was the one that sent the email, just to the public, DallasMavs.com address, and sort of said what we're doing here in China. And he responded pretty quickly and said, here's my private email address, send me your business plan. So he does a lot of work by email, and we had a lot of correspondence. He had a guy who's doing business development for him here in China that we met in January, and for the next 10 months, he proceeded to kind of take our temperature, check in, see the progress, really check us out. So it wasn't just boom, one email and we're done. It was a long process with a lot of information shared. But 10 months was enough for them to kind of get comfortable with us and sort of see, buy into our vision for where we're going to bring the company.
Was that a defining moment for your company?
It was important, yeah. At the time, the money itself was pretty important. It was also just a nice validation. We went on to raise money from some other investors, and it's just a stamp of confidence, right?
Was there ever talks about going into the show, the Shark Tank show?
There really wasn't a need for it. I mean,
Okay.
if we're able to go, I mean, we were both based in China at the time, right? So if we're able to, deal with this team, and we're already in the process, so there wasn't really a need to go on the show. So it was, we were dealing mostly with one guy in his team, and kind of post investment, we got plugged in more to his network and resources. He does a lot of food investment in the U.S.
Does Mark Cuban have a constant supply now of Baozza? Did he try it?
He has tried it. He likes it.
What's his feedback?
He likes it.
They're not selling it at the stadium, at the Dallas Mavericks?
Not yet. Not yet.
They probably will.
We'll see. Really, up until recently, we've just been here in China. Alex moved back to Los Angeles just about 6 weeks ago to get our Baozi USA launched. So we'll soon have a more steady supply of Baozi available in the US.
So I want to, a lot of people, in China, foreigners like us, the ones that stay for many years, a lot of them tend to start their own businesses, right? Small, medium, large. This kind of idea, it's very unique, what I told you the other day, right? And I wonder, how much money is involved in doing that? Like, how much money is needed? Or this is something that changes with from the beginning, in the middle?
I mean, it depends a lot on what you're doing, right?
Right.
For
food manufacturing,
So, I mean, food manufacturing, like the kind of products we're doing, is different from restaurants. I mean, if you're opening a restaurant, you're taking on a lease, right? You're buying all the equipment. There's more capex and more spending up front. For this product, we did definitely put some money into the restaurants that we opened. The actual factory manufacturing, that was not too crazy. We've run this really as a lean startup. So we've kept overhead low. We've been pretty smart about spending money. So, if you look back at the money that went specifically into developing this product, it wasn't a crazy amount. There were, like any startup, there are things that we could have not done, and we probably would have done differently if we can go back in time. But it's not a huge amount of money to get it up and running. It's really about how you spend your money. China has a lot of manufacturing, so I've been part of other companies, been an advisor to other companies that are also doing manufacturing of sunglasses and things like that. If you find the right partner who's willing to do smaller quantities of production up front, you get a product to market fairly quickly and fairly cheaply.
Is it fair to say that it's way easier and cheaper to start this kind of business in China than in the US?
Yes and no. We're going through a similar process in the US now that we did here in China, and obviously having the experience here, we're skipping a lot of the steps and doing it much faster, much smarter in the US.
Are you going to manufacture in the US, or are you going to export?
Manufacture in the US.
Okay.
Why this choice? Why not just continue from here and export it?
That was something we took a look at, certainly, especially earlier this year. When in the U.S. For a while, I mean, still now actually, frozen pizza became the new toilet paper. It was running out. People are staying at home. People are ordering. I mean, frozen sales in general were way up. Frozen pizza was way up. And we're like, okay, our factory here is licensed to export, so we could just put stuff on a reefer, send it to the U.S. And we decided for a few reasons that we didn't, the U.S. was going to be a big enough market for us that doing a made in China food product was not the right call. So it was worth it to be patient, wait a little bit, you get kind of made in USA Baozi stood up.
At what point do you think you may want to open your own factory? Or is this what's going to happen in the US?
That's a possibility for the U.S. A big difference between China and the U.S. is that just in terms of manufacturing capacity, there are hundreds, thousands of factories here in China that do Baozi manufacturing. In the U.S., there are fewer than 10. So there aren't as many choices there. So there's we have to look at the geography, how we're gonna produce, where we're gonna ship to, and also just the ultimate capacity. I mean, you don't have anywhere close to the same demand in the U.S. for steamed dough products. So you have factories here. I mean, the Chinese people are eating well more than 50 billion baozi per year. And the with government regulations and kind of crackdowns on small vendors, a lot of that manufacturing is being pushed to factory manufacturing. So there's a huge capacity here that there's not in the U.S. Mm-hmm. So in the U.S., assuming things go well, and we think they will, then at some point, depending on timing, probably we'll be looking at doing our own manufacturing.
Right. This looks like something that can explode. I mean, this is a business that has a very high ceiling, I think, worldwide, right?
What other markets are you looking at going into?
So we see the U.S. and China as the two core markets, and that's where we'll be physically based, the two of us. We've gotten interest. We've been on national TV in 20 some countries, and when we were opening a little joint, we ran a little joint in the Hutongs in Beijing, and someone flew up from the Philippines just to try Baozi. They saw us on Filipino national TV. So we've gotten interest from kind of all over Southeast Asia, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, UK, Germany. So we do see this as a global product, but we're a pretty early stage company, and there's only so many hours in the day. So
in the end, if you have a manufacturing hub in China, in Asia, and then one in US, then you can export from either one. What makes sense to other countries, right?
True. We're also looking at other places in Asia for a second Asian manufacturing hub. Exporting from China is not the easiest thing. It's especially for food. It's kind of surprising because people think of China as that's where manufacturing happens, but China itself is really strict when it comes to exporting food. It's actually more difficult to export a food product from China than it is to import it into the other country. And there is still a little bit of a stigma attached to made in China food products.
Just remarkable. I mean, not many people know this. Not many people would believe this, that it is highly regulated here in China, and that they take a lot of care about what's going out, actually.
I mean, the government cares about the image of China, and having bad food products go out and poison someone is really a black eye for the country. So they're stricter than you'd probably think. But at the same time, we're seeing this already in some markets. There is kind of a stigma about made in China food products that the rest of the countries where China can export food, a lot of them don't know that there's these stricter standards. So made in China is a really safe food product. So not for every market. Some care more or less, but there are some markets that we think we'd be better served by probably having manufacturing outside of China.
Most people that have been out there in America or in China would say that Chinese food made in America is very different and Chinese food in China is different. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how do you source ingredients to manufacture in the U.S. and what are the differences and what do you need to be careful about? But we're going to do that when we come back after this short break. Right, so we are back with Loren. Loren, continue talking a little bit about Baozza, right? And Baozza, and your plan to manufacture in the United States. Do you have a timeline for that specifically? And as we were saying earlier, products that are made in China and products that are made in America are seen as not being authentic. Like if you go to have fried rice in China or in America, like this is not a real thing. How are you guys tackling that particular perception?
Well, there's no such thing as a really authentic Baozi. I mean, we are the authentic Baozi, right? Okay. Because it's not Italian, it's not Chinese, it's a fusion product, right? Mm-hmm. So that's less of an issue for us. And our product is going to be very similar in the U.S. to China. We're not doing U.S. flavorings. I mean, you tried the pepperoni and the barbecue chicken. Those work for Western palates the same they do for Chinese. So there'll be some difference in terms of the ingredient selection. The U.S. has more ingredients available for pizza type fillings, right? There's just more options for mozzarella cheese. For pepperoni, we want to go nitrate free, uncured, those kind of things. There's a lot of selection in the U.S. market that there aren't that many kinds of pepperoni you can buy in China. Mm-hmm. So there's ingredient availability will affect that a bit. In terms of the timing for the U.S., so my partner there has been just at the factory, the last few weeks. Fillings factory is the Baozi factory, working on getting that stood up, and we're looking for kind of January, February to be in the market with the products.
Oh, really?
Yep.
that quick. And you're going for which distribution channels exactly in the U.S.?
In the U.S.,
Can you talk about that? I don't know.
sure. We are going to be certainly doing the supermarket channel, which is a lot more developed than here in China. There's tens of thousands of U.S. supermarkets that would kind of be a fit for our product, and a much more limited number here in China that are a great fit. We'll be doing some D2C, direct to consumer, shipping frozen internationally direct to your home, doing that through a partner rather than doing it ourselves.
Do you in the U.S. supermarkets? I'm assuming it will be next to the frozen pizzas rather than next to the Chinese section.
That's a good show. I mean, that's a difficult question to answer, or
That's a good question. I mean, we have our internal answers, our internal thoughts right now, and we're working with branding and sales and distribution people there. We're also doing a kind of full-blown market survey. More like online focus groups kind of things. Really, positioning is pretty key, and it's just such a different perception of the product for a Western consumer that's not familiar with Bao versus a Chinese consumer. So, here in China, we have, in general, in the supermarkets, we've tried to go into the pizza section. We started off doing that, and then we actually found we were getting better results when we were in there next to the jiaozi and the baozi, the Chinese buns, because we just compared favorably. It was a lot sexier, more colorful looking packaging. And so some of the supermarkets where we sell best are ones where we're positioned right next to the Chinese steam buns here. In the U.S., I think that's, if you get too far in the Asian section, you become a bit more of a niche product, and we see this really as a mainstream product. So the U.S. does have a lot of options for single-serve microwavable pizza products, microwavable or oven cooking pizza products.
Are you planning to? Are you at least thinking of more food products around that? Like, I don't know, popcorn baoza, like the popcorn chicken, maybe smaller or bigger, or are you going to have 20 flavors in the US, maybe after you know that it's doing well? I mean, is it something you discuss?
Sure. We have an R&D team. We have a pretty robust pipeline of things coming out, and that is everything from new flavors. So we've done 20, 30 different types of baozi. So we've done like a spicy Cajun, or Raging Cajun, mushroom chicken with bechamel sauce. We've done spicy Hawaiian jalapeno. Just anything that you can put on top of a pizza, you can put inside of a baozi. So definitely more flavors. We've done different sizes. We've done mini baozi, which are more like little kind of poppers, 30, 40 grams. We also have a dessert line we've been working on, which is different dough, kind of a chocolate lava bao. So cocoa in the dough, sweet dough, and then inside just a rich, gushy chocolate lava.
I want it right now.
It's delicious.
So what about the pricing? We didn't even talk about the pricing. I mean, this package of 2 baozi right now in China is about 20 RMB, right? You said, which is about $3. About that,
a little
right?
over 3, right?
I mean, what is the plan for the US? How much something? I was trying to think how much something like this would cost. What would be acceptable?
Sure. So that's another thing we're working through right now.
Right.
We'll have a definitive answer before we launch, obviously. But I think the goal is to keep the 2-pack under $5.
Okay.
How much under 5? We'll see. I think one of the things that we're while we are going to be compared to a Hot Pockets and to some of these other existing products, we're really going for a better quality product. So if you look at the ingredient list for some of these guys, they're hundreds of ingredients long, and half the ingredients you can't pronounce, right?
Right.
And we're not doing additives, we're not doing preservatives, we're keeping our ingredient list really short. So we're going for a healthier, more wholesome product that does, we use premium ingredients, and we expect it to command a higher price point than some of these mass-produced.
So usually the cheaper food is more crap, right? So that's about positioning, right? Positioning in the market.
Positioning, and I mean, we do have to take into account our own costs at the start, but I think we want to make it affordable. Neither one of us wants to be super premium that only a small section of the people can buy, but we're talking about under $5 for a 2-pack. That's not crazy prices. You think it in the US is possible that you will have it in restaurants and bars like here? Because I mean,
I mean, from one hand, I guess it depends on the kind of restaurants that may use frozen fries or something like that. But are you planning to do that, or?
That is something. That's something we're looking at. Matt, one of the things that we face and we have faced from day one is just how many hours are there in a day? How many people do we have to focus on this, and where does our focus need to be? So we think that the CPG channel, frozen products sold in supermarkets, is just such a big possibility that we don't want to spread our team too thin.
Yeah.
Alex was having a conversation 2 days ago with someone that wants to specifically sell Baozza to the food service channel. So we're open to that. We think that we see it working here in China. We have lots of cafes, restaurants, bars that we're a staple item on their menu, and their customers like it. So we think it would work in the U.S. It's just a question of when do we do that? Do we do the same product, or like here in China we're doing slightly different products for the two channels? But ultimately, yeah. And I think that compared to a Hot Pockets, you wouldn't want to go into your bar or restaurant and get a frozen pizza or a frozen Hot Pocket served to you. But we're trying to make the kind of a little bit more premium, more interesting, more gourmet product that works in both.
Right. You were talking earlier about how to actually prepare the baozi. So we shot some B-roll that we're going to be showing at this point how it works. Could you tell us a little bit about the different kinds of microwaves and the challenges that there are, and the kind of training that, you're here doing training or just business meetings?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
So I'm training our distributor and their sales team on how they should just explain the product to their own customers, right? Going to some meetings myself. So I was in the kitchen in a bunch of different bars and restaurants yesterday in Guangzhou, sort of showing their chefs how to prepare it. We can do that for the food service channel. I obviously can't go into every customer's home and make them their baozi for them. So we have instructions on the back of the box. We have QR codes with videos that show you how to cook this. User error has definitely been a thing. The ones that you tried have kind of a special technology steamer bag where it goes straight from the freezer into the microwave, and it won't explode. There's steam vents that release the steam. That's sort of a 2.0 or 3.0 version. The 1.0, you had to tear a little hole, and we had customers that wouldn't tear a hole, so the bag would explode. Customers that would rip a huge hole and the thing would dry out. So we were just leaving too much up to chance. So that there are all these little details that go into this kind of a consumer product that are not obvious from the outside, but they're important to it actually working well for the customer in their own environment.
You think a restaurant like this, this is, I would say, nice,
Italian.
upscale, Italian-owned Italian restaurant. Do you have restaurants like this in China that sell your product?
Sure.
That's surprising, I would say, I guess.
One of our best customers is a group in Beijing. They're selling foie gras. They're selling really fancy stuff. It's owned by a Belgian guy. It's in the Taikuli right in Sanlitun. Very fashionable, upscale kind of place. You can easily go there and spend 2, 3, 4, 500 RMB per person, and they sell a lot of baozi.
Nice. So just before my next question, I do want to give a shout out to this place. We're here right now in Matti Bistro, an Italian restaurant in Dongguan, one of the more well-known places. Thank you for letting us use your outdoor space.
Yep.
So, okay, I want to ask back to the money part, the investors, and you are by trade investment banker, right?
Yep.
Right. You've done it for many years. So when you have a business like this, and when you talk to someone like Mark Cuban or other investors, right, when they invest, are there any discussions about predefined goals? What is the goal of this business? Okay, we want to sell it in 2 or 3 years, or stuff like that. I want to ask how it works.
Sure. So yeah, that's the background I'm coming from, and I definitely use some of those skills or experience, and just when we were setting out and thinking about what are we building to, for sure. I will say that our investors have been pretty great. They've been patient, and they really, what we sold them on, what we honestly believe is we're selling the story, and this is something that we really think can go global and can be a household thing, right? So when you're looking at that kind of a big picture, people coming in early, it wasn't about counting the pennies for what was exactly last month's revenue and what was your month-on-month growth, right? Because those are really missing the forest for the trees. So that's all of our investors and Mark as well have been pretty patient as we build this, and and along the way we were kind of figuring out for ourselves. Okay, there's a difference between a product and a business. So we started with the product, but then it took us a while to figure out what is the business for this product. So I think we're at a point where we feel comfortable that we have a pretty good answer to that, but it took a while. So we don't have we have to hit this by the end of this year, or X by the end of this year, Y by the end of next year. It's sort of, we're building something pretty big, being smart with how we spend our money. We're both pretty aggressive people that want this thing to go big and go fast, but there's also the right sort of timing and pace to do that.
Are you still looking for more investors? Are there opportunities to invest with Baozza?
There are some. We're still in discussions.
Partners or
less so right now. I mean, we're open to investors. Period. That's depends on what they're going to bring to the table. Ideally, someone who's bringing more than just money. So, right before this meeting, I was on the phone with one of our shareholders who is helping us with the market research and really understanding the CPG market and the U.S. customer. Most of the people that have come into Baozza as investors have been people that add something else, right? So, people that are coming from a marketing background and can be advisors as well.
When it's an investor and he does some actual work, do they get a salary too, or?
No.
It depends.
No.
Okay.
In general, no.
Okay.
That's it's on a case by case basis.
Right.
It depends on their level of involvement, but for most people, the expectation is that they're investing in the company and they also want to see it. They want to see it succeed, right?
Right.
So they get more out of having the company succeed than they would from just a small consulting fee.
Right.
A silly question, but an important question. How has COVID thrown a curveball to your business?
It's been a multi-layered curveball. At the beginning, it was just our team was here in China. We had our marketing lady who was stuck in Yunnan in southwest China. We had other team members who were stuck in different cities, and we couldn't be in the same office. So we went to, we were pretty nimble, and we just switched to WeChat calls every single morning. Right? So got everyone in different parts of the country on WeChat calls, managed to work pretty well remotely. Our factory was shut down for a while. This happened right during Chinese New Year when they were already going to be shut down. But then even after Chinese New Year, it was extended. Workers came back. They had to be quarantined. On the more positive side was that China, and just like the U.S. and around the world, during COVID, people are stuck at home. Frozen sales, online grocery, all those sales all went up, and we were seeing an uptick in orders. But our warehouse in Shanghai was in a district that happened to be quarantined itself. So this small district in Shanghai, there were no vehicles allowed in or out. So we had sold out all of our products on all the online platforms, and we couldn't get product because we literally could not get a truck into this community. So that was just kind of really tangible effects at the beginning. It was a mixed bag for us. Grocery sales were up, but then we do sell to hotels and restaurants and bars that were pretty negatively affected. Mm-hmm. So the grocery went up, but those on-premise sales went down. For the U.S., the original plan was to have started the U.S. earlier than we did, but it was just not a great situation to have Alex go back into. So we waited a little bit on sending it back just because stepping into a mess. Some of the partners we were going to work with in the U.S., they were going bankrupt or going through big layoffs. There was a lot of chaos in the supply chain there, and the U.S. was split between some factories or other production partners. Some were going gonzo, really busy because they were supplying the supermarket channel. Some were having a lot of pain because they were supplying the food service and restaurant channel. So beyond China and the U.S., we have been trying to get products to some of these other countries to to export, and just frozen shipping internationally became a lot more challenging during COVID.
And expensive.
And expensive is one thing, but just not even possible. So things that would have been easy before, whether it be shipping via DHL, FedEx, whatever, or just giving someone who's traveling to country X, giving him some Baozi to take on the plane, that all just went away. So we've been trying to get product to Singapore for months now and just have not been able to get product from point A to point B. So that did slow down some of the international development a little bit.
Right.
How do you see the political atmosphere in the U.S. Affecting your business? None at all. What do you expect?
I mean, there is some impact. This is less of a political atmosphere thing, but just some of the tariffs that went into place. We're not exporting Baozi from China to the U.S., but some of our packaging, some of the other things that go into the product are things that we do make here. So that's gotten a bit more expensive. Just tariffs being slapped on products coming from China.
Cheese going here.
Cheese has not had as much of an impact. Not for those reasons. In the U.S., cheese has been really, the prices have been really up and down, mostly up because of the pandemic. It's not really a political thing. I will say that, situation, it's not the best, it's not the highest point in U.S.-China relations right now. So that's one thing that, in terms of how the brand is perceived, made in China versus made in the USA, it was something, in the back of our minds for sure.
Something to think about. So I wanted to ask about, your background. Like I told you when we took a break, right? Like it must be that, like you being an investment banker, you studied in Harvard. What did you study there?
East Asian Studies.
East Asia Studies, right?
Yep.
And you have you've come to China first time 2001, 2000 or something like that, right?
Yep.
So you've been in China for a while, right? You also you own a chain of Mexican restaurant in Beijing, which we haven't even mentioned.
Yeah.
So you got some kind of food background, you got investment background, you speak Chinese. Is it like a combination of everything that probably helped you being successful with this brand?
I mean, sure. There's a lot of you learn from your experiences, right? And I definitely had some experiences that were relevant. I don't think there was a single person in China when we started this that had any experience in making pizza Baozi. So I couldn't have been that well prepared for certain aspects of it. But definitely from the finance side, knowing how to how to manage cash flow, and there were some tough times, and we were pretty we had modeled everything out. We knew exactly when we were going to run out of money or what we had to do to keep the company alive. So just being a bit familiar with the whole finance aspect was helpful. And part of doing investment banking or consulting was just working with a lot of clients, and I've worked with companies in 15 countries, probably at least 25, 30 different industries. So you just see a lot, and you see a lot of business models. You see what works, what doesn't. So that definitely informed some of our thinking about what to do and what not to do.
No.
Sorry.
No, I wanted to go into something that we talked when we were in the kitchen. We were talking about ingredients, and you were talking about the different processes to get kind of like a license to sell food in China. Is it similar or different from the US, for example? Are there more requirements from the Food and Drug Administration? How do they compare the Chinese Food and Drug Administration and the American one?
I would say in general, China is stricter. China.
This is a shocker to
China
a lot of
is
people.
stricter, you said?
China is
Yes.
stricter.
Huh.
They're very different systems, and the U.S. has a lot more access to lawsuits. So there's between insurance and the courts, there's those repercussions. So if you don't make a good product, you can be sued, right? And there's a whole lot of lawsuits that happen in the U.S. So there's that sort of stick happening here. In China, there certainly are lawsuits. There's a robust legal system, but China steps in a little bit earlier to really regulate the whole production. So we were surprised ourselves. Just some of the challenges on the regulatory side here, the strictness about labeling. Really strict labeling requirements. So we have a labeling consultant and lawyer that reviews every inch of every box that goes out, and we send a box. We change the design to the current one and came back with like 16 different things that had to be changed to match up with Chinese. Chinese has to be larger than English every time or both appear, unless it's part of a trademarked image. There are certain requirements that the net weight has to be above a certain amount of millimeters, that the font has to be above a certain amount of millimeters. There's a lot of things about the words that you're able to use to describe your product. So we have a lot of, for the pepperoni is actually salami right now. And so I mean, it's Europeans might say salami more. In America, you say pepperoni more often. But for us to be able to say pepperoni in Chinese, we had to call it Beibei Loni Ishe Irali wait Ishe Xiangchang Baoza versus salami Baoza.
So you just took the decision.
We went with salami, yeah. And there were specific regulatory issues why we had to call pepperoni that name.
So there are challenges with this kind of in this area here, and there are challenges in the US. They're just maybe not exactly the same details, but
they're not exactly the same. I mean, for the US, we're working with co-packers, OEM relationships, where they've been doing this for a long time. It's a really smooth process, so there's not much heavy lifting that we have to do as a brand.
Right, so it's more, you can get more help with from experienced company service providers there, right? And here you had to kind of to figure it out a lot of it by yourself.
We did, and part of that was coming from, I mean, we're making a product that no one else was making in China. And so the Baozza factories, I mean, some of these guys are doing millions, tens of millions of their Baozza every month. So it's not like they're unfamiliar with the regulations, but none of them had ever put cheese inside. Or tomato sauce inside, so they had to go back to their licenses and add cheese to their license of things they could produce.
Those first days at the factory, did they look at you like, what, cheese? What do you want to put inside?
We got some raised eyebrows for sure.
How about marketing? Brand is I think a lot of it is about marketing, right? How do you do it now in China, and how is it different at all doing it in the Western countries, in the USA?
So, I mean, we have definitely different strategies. I mean, they're just different social media platforms. China has its own ecosystem that the US doesn't. So there's some that are shared. Instagram, even though it's not something that you can easily access here.
I noticed that you have 2 Instagram accounts.
We have more than 2.
Right.
We have Hong Kong, China, the US. We've registered several other countries as well. So Instagram is something that does kind of cut across geographies. So that's going to be, we're still early days here, but that'll be sort of managed in the US and mostly shared content, a little bit of China-specific content.
Like it's defined with your audience first, right? Like, who do you target? So, like, do you use TikTok? Do you use Douyin? So are you trying to get younger people? I mean, are you, like, how does it, is it different audience a bit in here and in the US that you expect to have?
I mean, it's a relatively similar audience between the two. I mean, when we first started, we were thinking through the issue of who are our customers, right? And we were going to these events, talking to tens of thousands of people and seeing their feedback, and the feedback was generally pretty positive across the board, from Chinese to foreign, no matter what country you're coming from.
College students, families.
And the one thing that was very clear is that here in China, especially, the correlation between age and how much they like the product. Mm-hmm. You get above 35, 40, and the interest level goes way down. And it really correlates to how long has pizza been available here in China, been widespread, and how common is cheese. So if you're looking at kids who are 5, 6 years old, for them, cheese is a normal thing. Pizza is a normal thing. So
US will be different, right? 50, 60-year-old, pizza has been there forever.
Yes. So there's not going to be that sort of stark age barrier, age kind of difference in the US.
Right.
But the product itself, especially for the consumer product, it has a similar appeal in both countries, which is that, like you saw, it's really convenient. It's in the US, it's even faster in a microwave. So you're looking at 45 to 60 seconds in a microwave. So for someone who's on the go, you're a young professional, or you're a parent with young kids, and you just want to get something that's nutritious, it's wholesome, it's not junk food. you want it quick, it's a great solution. And that's true in both countries.
Sorry, I had a question related to your marketing strategy. Does that strategy go through KOLs? Have you thought about any KOLs that you would like to have, advertising your product? I don't know, Gordon Ramsay or whatever. I don't know. Any thoughts about that or?
Sure. So here in China, we've done some KOL stuff. Had okay results. I think what our strategy is right now is working more with KOCs, which KOCs are like grassroots KOLs.
So maybe we explain to the audience,
sure.
What is it? KOL is like an influencer, and how is KOC different?
So they're just different by one letter, right? So KOL is a key opinion leader, right? So this is someone that has tens of thousands of fans, millions of fans, and they're looking to them. So this could be a Gwyneth Paltrow. It's a A-lister or someone who focuses on food or lifestyle, whatever. They've got fans on social media, and you're paying money for them to eat your product, to plug your product. Sometimes a lot of money. KOCs are key opinion consumers. So they are same idea. They're all on social media. I mean, everyone's on social media. They're smaller. So they're usually more localized, grassroots set of 500 fans, 1,000 fans, 2,000 fans, and they're a lot cheaper and more flexible and less corporate. So like this month, even this week, we're working with 64 KOCs in cities where we have distribution. That are, this is not someone who's necessarily doing this for their full-time job. And in fact, if they are, they're probably not a KOC. It's a mom who's got she's got a young kid. She works as a graphic designer. She's got her Chinese. She's got 2,000 people that follow her, and she posts stuff on being a mom, on parenting, on kids brands,
which
on
channel?
food.
So it can be various channels, right? Any specific channel?
Red is one of our major focuses, Xiaohongshu.
Okay, yeah.
Which it's skews female, skews female, skews young. A lot of parents there. People are looking for consumer brands. We're still doing. We're doing things like Douyin. We're doing Weibo. We're doing WeChat. These two campaigns are focused on Red. And the idea was that we could go out and spend a lot of money on a KOL. And we will do those kind of things in the future, but oftentimes, to me at least, that comes across as this corporate sponsored thing where I give this guy 100,000 RMB and he goes out and plugs the product. Versus KOCs, they're like your neighbor, right?
Yeah.
And they're more credible. They're trusted by their grassroots.
This totally makes sense. And how does it work? Maybe more in details. Like you say, it's cheaper, which makes sense, right? They have not as many followers as KOLs.
Can I interrupt you 1 second?
Sure.
You know that we have a camera limitation, right? We are stuck at 30 minutes, so we're going to take a short break. Come back with that question, okay?
All right. So we were talking about KOLs, KOCs. You said that you're working with KOCs right now quite a lot, like 64 this week.
Yep.
And I want to know, like, how does it work? So, do you give them the material? Because that would be a bit less organic, right? How do you need to provide it? And you said it's quite cheap. Like, is it enough to just give them some free Baozza? Or how does it?
Sure. So we are giving them free Baozza,
Sure.
and then we're paying them on top of that. So we do give them some background information. We things on how to heat the product, because the last thing you want is for an influencer to be heating your product in the wrong way, and then it doesn't
look
look
that experience.
I've only had that a couple times this week. Like I think twice yesterday, we had to send videos back because they were preparing the Baozi wrong. So we give instruction to make sure that they are delivering the correct message, but we tell them some things about the product, so just so they know, what's about the nutritional aspects and the high quality ingredients. So they have some material to work from, but then we try not to micromanage too much, because if you do too much of that, it sounds too corporate, and we want it to be more grassroots.
Is it like those kind of people, they subscribe to some agency, basically? And
How do you find them?
Yeah, so they're working with the MCN, Multi-Channel Network, which is an agency that manages them. So you go to the agency has a stable of hundreds or thousands of these kind of people, and you choose people that that fits your demographic, that fits your lifestyle, that have the same values as you.
What's the call for action, and how do you measure the results?
It depends. So, for example, we sell on Homa, which is nationwide supermarket channel. We're selling on their online platform, and there's not a direct click through. So you can't just like watch a video and click through to buy on Homa. So we'll have in the video or the text that the KOC is posting, they'll say where we're available to buy, but it's not a direct. You can't directly measure the ROI. For some platforms like Taobao, there is a direct, you see it, you can click on a link, you go buy. So there's a...
Not from WeChat, right? You can...
So there's... China's a bit weird. There's all these different ecosystems.
Yes.
And especially when you have the intersection of, online e-commerce platforms usually have a more direct connection. But if you want to push people to go to offline stores or to go to a different app use it, it's, there is... we do want to see sales go up, but we're also just trying to build a general brand awareness, so people know what the product and the brand is.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the US has that. In China, on Douyin, you can't write WeChat. It's blocked. The word is blocked.
Yeah?
Yes, Weixin, you cannot write it on Douyin. So you cannot tell your Douyin followers to follow you on Weixin or whatever. Yeah, and vice versa. A lot of these kind of things in China, I don't think it's like that in other countries.
I've been in China for so long. This is the market I'm most familiar with. But no, there are a lot of silos like that.
Yeah.
And the tech giants that are behind these platforms are protective, and they don't want you migrating from one platform to another. So you have to duplicate efforts in different platforms and just kind of accept it for what it is.
Yeah. When you end up with different platforms doing exactly the same that the other ones are doing, like just yesterday or 2 days ago, Twitter came out with feeds, which is basically Snapchat of a couple of years ago.
They're a copy from each other, right? The stories. Now LinkedIn has stories.
Yeah, they will follow the same path,
Yeah, it makes sense, right? So I want to go more into there is a lot of things going on in your life, right? It's not just Baozza. What's the name of your Mexican restaurant in Beijing?
Qmex.
What does it mean?
There's a story. It's just the letter Q and Mex like Mexican. So quality Mexican. There's it's up to your interpretation.
And how many restaurants do you have?
We have 4 in Beijing.
4 in Beijing.
Okay. And has it been successful since when you opened it?
We've been at it for about 6 years. And
is it fast food or just sit and enjoy the whole experience?
Not doing tacoza?
Full service, not tacoza. Full service restaurants, so 300 square meters or so. Some a little bigger, some a little smaller. They are restaurants that I'd say medium to high end. So 140 RMB per person kind of places. We try to. It's not formal dining. We have great food. The Mexican ambassador likes to come to our restaurants, but we're not going for the super high end. And it's also it's a restaurant and bar. So people will stay until some of our locations will stay until 1, 2, 3 in the morning.
One more tequila, right?
Yes, uno más tequila. So we have pool tables and quiz nights and all that kind of stuff.
And one thing we spoke about the F&B business in China the other day, right? And one thing that has changed, I think, and that foreign restaurants owned by foreigners cannot count on foreign customers anymore, right? Before it was a bit easier to do that. Still not a good idea, even before, I guess, right? What's the percentage of your customers at the restaurants, foreigners versus Chinese?
Well, it's definitely gone down, and that's not because there are fewer foreign customers, but they're just more Chinese customers.
Right.
So when you're in, for speaking from my experience in Beijing, which is where I'm based, foreign customers are kind of easier to get in at the beginning.
They're familiar with the product. They're
familiar with the products. There's less education required. Tacos, burritos, people know what that is. So when we first started, I think it was a much higher percentage. Like even 40-50% of the customers were foreign, and now by this point, I would say it's probably 90% Chinese.
Wow.
So the foreign customer numbers have gone up, but just a lot more Chinese have learned what Mexican food is, and they become repeat customers. So.
A lot of foreigners that open restaurants make a mistake, what I think is a mistake, right? They're trying okay, they know the right thing. I need to attract Chinese people. I got foreign food. Let's change the taste a little bit. Yeah. So I guess your restaurant is very authentic, or?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, we have so it's a Mexican restaurant. We have two different brands within that. There's QMex Bar and Grill and QMex Taqueria. QMex Taqueria is a bit more of the more Mexican, Mexico City sort of style, and QMex Bar and Grill. We also have burgers and pizza and pasta. So we try to do a good job with everything that we serve. And with Mexican food, I mean, Mexico is a very diverse culinary nation. There's a huge variety of what Mexican food is. There's not just one type of authentic thing. So one of the things we tried to do was curate, and there's also California Mexican, there's Tex-Mex. There's a lot of different wrinkles on what Mexican food is. So we have tried to make things that are authentic and that they would be well received in California, well received in Texas, well received in Mexico City, and also curate a bit. So there's a wide variety of Mexican food, but not every Mexican dish is going to work in China. So it's not that you necessarily change the flavor to work in China, but that you just don't choose some of the things that would be common in Mexico because they're just not going to be accepted by the Chinese people.
Well.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question, just wanting to know if this has ever crossed your mind and whether this is possible in China. You just mentioned California, and California is known for taco trucks, or other parts of America as well. You don't see that many truck foods in China. But is that something that has ever crossed your mind?
Sure. We have a food truck at QMex.
Yeah.
We first used it for an event sponsored by the Mexican Cultural and Tourism Bureau. We did a big event in Chaoyang Park for several weeks, ended up with this truck. We've then used it for, I think, one other big event. And right now it's parked and basically used as a warehouse because it's a regulatory issue and it's a real estate issue. So you can't just drive around, park it wherever. You have to get permission from the landlord, go through this whole complicated process to be allowed to set up and serve food. So it's not something that made a lot of sense for us to really put effort into. I would love to see that happen, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
It's interesting to see. I wonder why this hasn't actually happened in China. The whole idea of a taco truck or just food trucks, because
licenses.
Imagine Baozza on a truck.
I mean, when we first working on the original Baozza idea, one of our thoughts was to use the food truck and skin it as a Baozza truck. We actually had a graphic designer do an entire design for the food truck with Baozza skins. We don't need a lot of space. It's pretty, not a whole lot of equipment to make. And we sort of gave up on that just because of all the licensing issues.
Like in Dongguan, I think only Songshan Lake is allowing food trucks. And maybe there is one company
and
that has a
stationary.
license.
It just looked like a truck.
No, they can move.
Around.
They can move. In a pool party, we had a food truck that came from Songshan Lake inside, but it's nothing like the US. But I mean, we all been in China for a long time, and if we know China, I think you won't be surprised if in 10 years from now suddenly you got more of that. I think.
Sure.
Right?
The other question that I had related to your Mexican restaurant is, how do you handle some ingredients that are, I would say, hard to get here? Let's say the pico de gallo, for example, or avocado for guacamole.
Is it different now?
Those from? Do you have them? What do you substitute them for or with?
I remember when we used to. I remember living in here. I remember going to Hong Kong to get avocados. I remember that 2004, 2003. Yeah.
So avocados are not really something you can substitute for. You have to use avocados.
Have the real thing.
So I mean, we buy lots and lots and lots. Tens and tens of thousands.
Are they grown in China or?
They're mostly imported. But avocados have become pretty popular here. I mean, they're a superfood. You can find them at, just down the street. You can find them at supermarkets here.
Right now,
So-
yes. Yeah.
Now, yes. So
Where
it's
do you
become.
bring them from, sorry?
What's up?
Where do you bring them from?
Let's see. I'm actually
Thailand.
not sure where they're
Usually
coming
there
from
is
right now.
Mexico and there is Chile, I think.
Oh, but that's too far. I mean, I've seen some in Southeast Asia.
Really?
Like Thailand, I think, or I don't
maybe.
know. That's what I was asking.
I don't know where ours are coming from right now. I know even there's even avocados that come from Turkey. But there's a pretty big market for it right now. They're not cheap. Getting avocados here is pretty expensive. So if you're gonna be running a Mexican restaurant, you kind of have to bite the bullet and just pay what it costs.
Right. And what do you about opening a restaurant in Beijing is very different than opening a restaurant in smaller scale cities, right? Would you consider opening a restaurant in a city like Dongguan, or I don't know, I guess there are many cities like that, right? Or is it something that you would say be careful of?
I mean, we definitely plan to bring QMX beyond Beijing. This year with COVID kind of slowed down our expansion plans a little bit. I think most people in the industry was the same. But yeah, we see this as becoming a regional and national brand. When you look at there are other people that have gone national, from people like Element Fresh, people like Waga's, people like Blue Frog. I think there's a possibility to do that. I mean, Beijing is our home, and it makes sense to get to a certain size there before expanding further and stretching the team. But yeah, we definitely see this not just as a Beijing or Shanghai or Shenzhen kind of thing.
How many Mexican restaurants are there in Beijing?
Oh boy,
a lot.
there's a surprising amount. I mean, your basic, just to do a taco or to do a burrito, you're using pretty simple ingredients. So a lot of people have done that. I mean, we don't see other people making Mexican food as a bad thing. We're just kind of educating the market. Even Taco Bell coming here, they're giving free publicity to educate Chinese consumers on what a taco is. There's, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 Mexican restaurants in Beijing, easily.
Would you recommend, let's say, a chef that's watching this show right now in other countries, never been to China, but is not doing so well, right, in some other countries? Would you recommend someone like that to come and try in China, to open a restaurant?
Trying to come to China, if you're based somewhere else, you want to come to China and open a restaurant with no experience here, that's going to be a challenge. I mean, coming here with a partner, coming here to work for an existing group and eventually go on. Just coming here day one, no China experience, I'm going to open a restaurant. Maybe, but it's not as simple as just turning the lights on and serving good food.
It's not, I'm sure, yeah. And so since you're 20 years ago, right, you studied the East Asian studies in Harvard. You studied some Chinese there. You studied in the US. Is this what you envisioned 20 years after?
Because I mean, you must have put some thought into why would I choose.
And also, why did you
studies,
choose that? Yeah.
I started off doing East Asian studies, thinking I was going to just learn Chinese language and be a linguist or polyglot at least. I did French and Spanish and German in high school. I like foreign languages. Started learning Chinese, and it sort of kind of grows on you. And it's also, I found it hard to really take a deep dive on the language without also learning the literature and philosophy and history. And then I started off learning Chinese before I'd spent time here. So in 2000, I was in Taiwan for a summer. 2001, 2002, I was in Beijing, and it just kind of felt right. It was an exciting place, really dynamic. I was in Beijing in 2001 when China acceded to the WTO, and a lot of changes. I was also there in summer 2001 when Beijing won the 2008 Olympic bid, and you just saw all these changes happening in rapid fire. So I kind of wanted to be part of that dynamism. I thought then and still think that China's development is going to be one of the most important stories of the 21st century. So I didn't necessarily expect to be doing Mexican food and steamed pizza buns when I first started
in China.
Yeah, I looked at academia, looked at a few other things, and investment banking for me was really about learning. About getting experience with business, which is new to me when I started, and when I left that, it was about doing something that, it was business, but something that I kind of felt good about. And food is something I love because everyone has to eat every single day. It's not like fashion or something where you can have it. You don't really need the spring 2021 line from this group, but you got to eat. And if people are going to be eating, being able to serve them something that's good, that brings a smile to their face. They come into your restaurant, they have a good time, and they celebrate birthdays and anniversaries, or even for something like Baozza they're eating at home, something that their kids love and their parents are happy because it's easy to make. It's just a really tangible kind of thing that it's fun to do.
I'm sure you are pretty much in touch with what's happening in terms of international business. Are you familiar with the RCEP that was signed just a couple of days ago? The whole regional ASEAN plus China agreement in which there's going to be no tariffs Do you follow those news? Or?
In general, yes.
Yeah.
These last couple days have been just wall-to-wall meetings, so
Okay.
I've seen the headlines and kind of it's on the list to read more about after this craziness goes away.
Because that's going to be super interesting for anybody trying to import or export. Just no tariffs. That's pretty remarkable. The
I want
largest.
to talk a little bit about life in China, right? Just before we are going to finish. So you've been here 20 years on and off. I mean, Taiwan too before, right? And being an expat in China has changed, right? Over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never lived in Beijing. I've been there a couple of times. And even that is different than a city like Dongguan, of course, right? But in general, probably in a similar way, living as an expat in China has changed. What's your attitude towards that? You know, some people keep complaining about stuff all the time. Different attitudes. What is yours?
I mean, you kind of accept China for what it is, right? You're not gonna change China.
Yeah.
So it's being an expat here has certainly changed. I mean, being a Chinese person here has certainly changed, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to change China, but China is changing.
China
China's
changes
changing.
you.
There's been good changes and there's been bad changes. In Beijing, I love Beijing for being a little bit gritty. It's a little bit gritty. It's the people are real. It's not as international or polished as a Shanghai, but Beijing has become a little bit less gritty. Some of the dive bars and some of the joints that I would used to go to they're not open anymore. It is more polished. It's more sophisticated, which has good and bad sides. For our restaurants have evolved as well. So there are if you want to go out and get good Mexican, good French, good Peruvian, there are those kind of things that there wouldn't have been 10 years ago or 20 years ago for sure.
Right. And we still don't have them here. We can visit Beijing for that. But is there a type of a person? Is it like the type of a foreigner that could be living in China happily, and that's something that we can define, and the types that just come here for 2 years and just want to get the hell out of here?
I mean, there's a lot of different ways to experience China. Not everyone has to stay here for 20 years. You can definitely come and just experience, the huge cities, right? And almost any city you go to, any big city, it's going to be relatively dynamic, right? Versus, in the West, you have cities that have been around for hundreds of years and haven't really had much population growth for the last 50 years or 200 years. That's not a Chinese city, right? I mean, Dongguan, if you look at Dongguan now versus Dongguan 5 or 10 or 15 years ago, it's just completely different.
Right.
So not everyone wants that kind of pace of rapid change. You kind of have to accept China on its own terms and be pretty adaptable to be happy here.
I would say that's one of the most common features of anybody who wants to make it here. Being adaptable, as you say, being flexible, and
I think one definition of the people like us that stay here and still happy here and not planning leaving anytime soon, and I think Bram said it in another podcast, that people that enjoy the unpredictable, the quick changes, it's interesting to see, right? We don't want just the mundane lifestyle. I think that's maybe one of the things. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, sure.
What a survival instinct. My father used to call it a BMX rider instinct. Just what's ahead of this turn? What's gonna happen after this bump? What's just moving.
And it's even a haul, because after a while, if you do go back, you may be like,
nothing's happening here.
Yeah, it's like coming off from some
Very monotonous and dull.
Yeah.
I mean, when I go back to the U.S., it's a reverse culture shock for sure. I mean, even going to a New York.
And you're from
Kentucky.
Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
So even going to New York, it is still reverse culture shock.
It still feels kind of slow.
New York kind of slow. That's kind of funny.
I mean, and if you look at the speed of change in New York, you look at a picture of this. Pick any street in New York. Look at a picture now versus a picture 20 years ago.
Same.
It's going to look about the same. The buildings are the same. There's obviously there's construction. There's new things happening. Brands come in and out. New restaurant options, but nothing compared to the changes that are happening in Dongguan or Shanghai or Beijing.
Right. How do you feel when you go back?
Well, Colombia is Colombia. Colombia is very. I'm from Colombia. I don't know. I didn't mention that before. So for me, it's like going back a few decades into China. We still haven't built a tunnel that's
Right.
very necessary for the last 40 years.
Right.
So it's like you're going back to a not moving picture.
Can be nice for a holiday, right?
Yeah.
But after a while.
One of the greatest things is introducing my wife to where I come from.
Right.
But really, it feels like it's a picture that's not moving. It's
Right.
pretty much the same situation.
Right. So, I mean, what's your plans for the future? Are you in China? Are you going to stay in China? Are you going to try new businesses?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yes.
I'm here in China. I'm enjoying being here right now. Enjoying the ride. Liking what I'm doing. No plans to leave. I don't know that I'm not committing on air to being here for the rest of my life, but this is the right place for me and for my wife, and for the companies right I'm doing right now.
Growing a family in China and everything. Yeah.
Yep.
Your wife is Chinese.
Yes.
Okay. And you speak Chinese very well. That's another thing that is very, I would say, helpful. We always laugh at it, right,
Yeah.
me and you, that we
Because
are.
our Chinese is crap.
Yeah, our Chinese is not far from being good enough. But I guess that's another thing that with the other thing we discuss help you to, with businesses and everything else. In Beijing, there are many foreigners that speak Chinese, probably more
A
than
lot.
cities like, maybe Beijing would be the most, right?
I'd say on a per capita basis, the percentage of Chinese speakers in Beijing is going to be higher than most cities in
I
China.
would say because of the embassies and all that kind of work.
And the kind of people that it draws. You get a lot of kind of longer term China hands versus Shanghai is just a more international city. People come in, work, have fun, party, go to the bun, leave. So you get a lot of Chinese speakers in Beijing. So yeah, I mean, speaking Chinese is definitely helpful for a lot of situations. I mean, you can come here and do things without, but you're just gonna have that extra layer of headaches and communication, and things are not as smooth if you're not able to communicate fluently.
Do you have any favorite place in Beijing?
Your favorite places? Like what kind of places?
No, like not a restaurant. Like your favorite place to go to in Beijing.
Yeah, I live right down the street from Chaoyang Park, which is I think it's the largest urban park in Asia.
Okay.
So it's comparable to like a Central Park, a little bit smaller in New York.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I've got my annual pass, and
I need the pass to the park.
Yep.
All right.
So it's you have to pay to get in, but the annual pass it's like $12 for a year.
Okay.
So it's not crazy amounts.
Right.
But there's lakes, there's trees, there's flowers. You can kind of feel like you're out of just the urban crush for a while, So
All right. Look, we could go on and on talking about
Right.
Baozza, which is a really revolutionary product. But we need to wrap up this show. Ziv,
Right.
any final thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy. We got to meet you, and we had the opportunity to do this together while you're here in
We want
Guangdong.
to thank you also.
I'm probably going to order some Baozza from Taobao,
awesome.
right, or from the spa right here, and we're happy to let people know about this very unique product. It's nice to see foreigners in China inventing something like that. This is really cool, I think,
Yeah.
and succeeding, And also looking forward next time I go to the US to get it there too.
Awesome.
Thank you for being here with us today.
All right. Thanks,
We
guys.
appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right.
And this was?
Of course.
China.
Bye, guys.